Shalom, guys. My name is Boris Dolin. That's right. And I'm speaking with you from a place called Tkoa on the border of the Judean desert. The city that you've just seen through my window is the city of Bethlehem, just south of Jerusalem. And yes, I live in the middle of Judea. And maybe one of the days you can actually visit me, I think, probably, maybe, if the coronavirus will die eventually. Anyhow, everything that Masha said exactly like that, and she asked me to share with you first about the IDF. So we have a unit in the IDF that is called Eitan, which means, as a word in Hebrew, power or strength or something like that. But also another meaning, it means searching for people who are missing. And the unit exists for something like 40, 50 years. And what we do, I actually work for the IDF in this unit, is search for soldiers that disappeared on us, that disappeared in action. And my specific part, like my specific team within this unit, what we are doing, we're searching for people who disappeared a long time ago, beginning from the War of Independence, which is 1948. Now, each of those people, and we have something like 176 Israeli soldiers missing, most of them from back then, from the War of Independence and the following few years. Each one of those has a file, and each one of those files has an investigator that leads this file. And this is my responsibility. I have several of those files. I have several names, several people. And Israel kind of came to me and said, you know what, now it's your job to find these people. And it's it's the most amazing thing. It's seriously, it's a humane thing to go and to find your brother that kind of disappeared a long time before you were born. Sometimes it's, well, you have something to work with. You have all kind of clues, all kind of evidence. You have materials from previous investigators. And sometimes it's from nothing, it's just zero. For example, we have several cases of people who disappeared in sea, people from the Navy or pilots that their planes crashed into the Mediterranean. And what do you do in this case? It's the ocean, go figure. And we go and we figure. And we have a lot of operations. Basically, whatever we need, Israel will give us. The government eventually, well, you can move satellites in order to find the remains of people who died 71 years ago. So this is my job, or at least one of them. And Masha kind of connected to that because she just saw the enormous pile of files that I have in my living room. Anyhow, but this is not what we are here to talk about. The theme of our talk today, a question, haha. No, I don't, sorry. Anyhow, so the thing that we are here to talk about, this talk, I named it once, The Long Way Home, because I think that most of you guys, I'm seeing you for the first time in my life, but this is not exactly the case because we all are connected and we are basically part of the same tribe. This is a spoiler for the second talk today. Something happened to this tribe, something happened to this nation, and it happened actually just on those hills out of my window 2,000 years ago. We began a terrible war against the Roman Empire. We lost it. We fought them for generations until the Roman legions just erased us. And they destroyed Judea, and we were slain or sent to exile. The place was renamed into Palestina, and we were supposed to disappear. But the thing is that we didn't, because something very strange happened. We were scattered all over the globe, but in every place that we went to, we kind of carried this suitcase. And within this suitcase, this entire thing that is called the Jewish world, this Jewish civilization, all those ideas and memories and concepts and traditions and all this history that makes us us. And we never forgot. Well, at least some of us never forgot. Our grandparents never forgot, and their grandparents and their grandparents. And the story that I'm about to tell you is the story of a very far away, sometimes very strange, sometimes very unexpected Jewish communities at the edges of Earth. Because this great explosion that happened here 2,000 years ago, people kept moving. And some of us went to places that are kind of familiar to us, you know, Ukraine or North Africa or California. But apparently some of us eventually reached completely strange places. And this is the story of those pieces of the Jewish tribe just living their lives at the edge of the earth. So I'm going to share something with you in a tiny moment, and it looks like this. This guy. And this guy is a Jewish person, but I'm guessing that when I'm saying the word Jew, this is not the first image that you will think about. And yet he is a Jewish man living in a city called Kaifeng. Kaifeng is right here at the very east of China. And more or less 1,000 years ago, this is how Kaifeng looks like. More or less 1,000 years ago, a group of Jewish families came to this guy, the Chinese emperor. And they met him and they said, hello, we are a group of traders. We came from a place called Persia, and we would like to live here. We would like to take part of your China. And he said, you know what? Okay, sure, live here, of course, trade, whatever. And then they said, yes, but you see, there's this tiny thing. You see, we are Jews. Yeah, Jews, because they came from a world that kind of dislikes us in many cases, and they expected that the second he discovers that this group of families are actually Jewish people, he will turn on them and horrible things will happen. So they kind of decided to open everything in the beginning, to get the pogrom in the very start, and then to keep with their lives. So they're going like, we are Jewish. And he says, who? Because he never heard about us. This is the edge of the world. Who are, what? And they're like, yeah, Jews, you know, Jews. And he says, nah. No, we see, we are Jewish people. And eventually he gets enough of that. And he says to them, you know what, I really don't care. All I care about is for you to keep the laws of the country and to keep the traditions of your ancestors. Because apparently in China, this is a major value, to live by the traditions from the previous generations of your family. And so this group of families, probably a few dozen people, began their lives in a city of Kaifeng in the east of China. And then generation passes, and another one, and they multiply. And there's a Jewish community at the outskirts of China. Now these guys, with every new generation, they feel that something from their tribal memory, something from their Jewishness, from their civilization, is being lost. Why? Because they reached too far. They got disconnected from the big Jewish world. And each time one of them has some question about Judaism, some question about tradition, some question about history, they just don't have anybody to ask. Well, the entire Jewish world is too far away. So each generation, they lose something and they feel as if their identity is kind of falling through their hands like sand, which is, I guess, a terrible feeling. Centuries pass and they're trying to hold as like hard as they can, but they keep losing. And then something kind of funny happens because this guy goes into China. Now, again, in a second. Now, this guy, he was a smart person, like seriously smart person, much smarter than his...
But are you still sharing your screen? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. In a second. This is the emperor. This is the way the Jews of Kaifeng looked like 100 years ago. And again, when I'm saying the word Jews, these are not exactly the images, and this is not exactly the people that you will imagine. Why they look actually Chinese? Well, first of all, not all of us look actually Semite from the Middle East. And also, today, Judaism, the connection, the belonging to the Jewish people is passed by the maternal line. It means that if your mother is Jewish, you are considered to be Jewish by the tribal tradition. But this is a relatively new thing. It began in the Middle Ages in Europe. After, during the Crusades, many Jewish communities were destroyed. Women were raped, babies were born, and nobody knew who is the father. So Jewish rabbis came together and decided to change it. Decided that connection to the tribe will go by the mother. But before that, we are Middle Eastern people, and so connection to the family, connection to the tribe was decided by the father. These Jews of Kaifeng, they disconnected from the major Jewish world before this change, so they kind of missed it. And so they just married Chinese women, which is perfectly fine. And again, this is by the Chinese tradition. The father in China decides what is the nature of the family. So after a few generations, they basically all look like this, look Chinese. Now that guy is the guy that I began to talk about. His name was Matthias Ricci, and he was a smart guy. He was a Catholic missionary. He came to China to spread Catholic Christianity. And he was smart. He was much smarter than all those people, all those missionaries coming before him. And they were kind of few of them before him. All the previous people, they landed in the middle of China, stood in the middle of some central street or square or whatever, in front of some central palace, and they began to preach. They stood there, they shouted mostly in Latin, and basically what they said to the Chinese people is, you have to change your ways. You have to stop being Chinese. You need to become more like me. You have to basically become me, which is in China a terrible thing to say. You're not supposed to say these things. In China, the tradition of your family is a major value again. But these Catholic people stood in the middle. You have to change everything. You have to drop your gods, drop the emperor. The emperor is not a god. Blah, 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 blah. Vatican, blah, 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 Pope. And the Chinese people, first of all, they didn't understand. But when they actually understood, that was thought as a call for a rebellion. That was a challenge for the emperor. So all the previous missionaries going to China basically lost their lives in terrible ways. That guy that I showed you, his name was Matthias Ricci, and he was a genius. Because when he came to China, and he did in the 17th century, he came without thinking of himself as better than the Chinese, as a superior to the Chinese. He saw them as equals. And before he actually landed in China, he spent like a decade or two just studying the Chinese culture. He studied Chinese, spoke it perfectly. He dressed just like a Chinese person. He respected all their traditions and everything. And when he eventually went into China, he was accepted just like, I don't know, another philosopher, a wise man, whatever. Nobody cared that he brought a new religion as long as he respected the local customs. Now this guy, again, he devoted his entire life to this idea. And he sits in Beijing, he builds himself a church, he lives his life. Until a few years later, one of the Jews of Kaifeng comes to town. And he comes there to go through a government test. He wants to be an official in the government. To work for the emperor, he needs to do some tests. He went to the capital, to Beijing. And when he's done, he goes to drink something in the local pub. On the other side of the street, he sees a building with some strange form on top of it, something like this. And he sees a statue in the yard, a woman holding a baby. Now, he has no idea, this Jew of Kaifeng, he has no idea that Christianity exists. He doesn't recognize any of the symbols. So he goes to this pub on the other side of the street and he asks them, guys, what the hell is going on over there? And they say, you won't believe it. There's some strange person came here from some distant Western country. And he says that there's only one God. And the Jew goes, ooh. And yeah, and he speaks about a city called Jerusalem. And the Jew goes, ooh. And yeah, and he says something about Messiah from the house of David, something like that. And the Jew goes, woo, woo. So he runs to the other side of the street into the church, jumps over this Matthias Ricci guy, hugs him and kisses him because he's sure that that guy is another Jew. Now think of this for a second from the perspective of the Catholic priest. He devoted his entire life to go to China. He studied Chinese for decades, only to discover that Jews are sitting there already and they don't even know he exists. It's kind of, Anyhow, there's a very strange conversation going on probably, while both of them understand that the other guy is kind of unexpected. And then the Jew goes home. After a while, the Catholic priest, he gets a letter from Kaifeng, from the Rebbe of Kaifeng. And the Rebbe says, you know what? I understand that you basically come from some different religion, Christianity, it is called, something like that. Anyhow, I'm sure that you know about us more than we know about ourselves. So what I suggest is that you will forget about this Christianity thing, come here and replace me as the Rebbe of the community, which he did. He did come to Kaifeng. He didn't replace him as the Rebbe, but he did arrive to the place. And he spent some time with the Jews of Kaifeng. He wrote about them. He made some pictures, some images of their synagogue. And eventually, something happened. And eventually, this is how we know how the synagogue of Kaifeng looked like. So in a second, you will see it also. Now, when I say the word synagogue, probably this is not exactly what you imagine, because this is it. To the left, like the down left corner, is the drawing of Matthias Ricci. It looks just like a Chinese temple. At the upper corner, also in the left, this is an image of the synagogue taken in the 19th century. And to the right, this is a model of the synagogue of Kaifeng that stands today in the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv. This is, again, not exactly a typical synagogue. Probably it looks kind of different from the synagogues that you have in your towns and cities. But this was the synagogue of the Jews of Kaifeng until it wasn't, because in the late 19th century, it was destroyed. There was a flood and everything was gone. The synagogue was destroyed. The rabbi passed away really soon after that, and they lost everything. They lost their identity, they lost their memory, they had no idea anymore. It's almost 1,000 years after they reached Kaifeng, and they are forgetting almost everything. So at the place of the synagogue, they put this one stone here in the middle of the picture. And on this stone, they wrote the history of the community. This is it. They wrote the history of the community. You can see maybe these tiny Chinese letters. Everything that I'm telling you is written on over there, because their own history, this is something that they did remember. This is them today, but let's wait for a second. They were so desperate that somewhere in the late 19th century, they actually took their Torah scroll, because they had several of those, and they just opened it in the city market under some roof, put a sign in Chinese saying, if you are able to read this, please tell us what is written here. Maybe one of the people, just random person on the market, is reading Hebrew, who knows? But they didn't. And then at the very last second, just 1 millisecond before everything is forgotten and they lost everything, the last connection to the Jewish idea, it's the 20th century. And people begin to move. The world begins to getting smaller. And they have several Jewish travelers reaching Kaifeng, finding them basically, and suddenly they reconnected. And this cup that was almost empty is beginning to fill again, and the knowledge is going back. And so again, I just showed you how those people, how the Jews of Kaifeng look today. Today, it's a community of something like 1,000 people living still there in Kaifeng at the original place, the original streets for 1,000 years. And again, they look very Chinese today. This is them, but you can see that that they have kippas. You can maybe see that they are reading the Haggadah of Pesach, of Passover, actually translated to Chinese.
Boris,
Over here,
question: are they halachically Jewish? Like 100%?
So this is actually an interesting question, because yes and no, like 100% yes, 100% no. Why 100% yes? Because they left the Jewish world. They got disconnected before we switched to the maternal lines. So they are basically following the older tradition, and they do follow it. They have all the lines completely written. Everybody knows who was everybody's like grandfather. But everybody else, like the other 99.9999999% of the Jewish people, we switch to maternal lines. And so looking from the point of view of the total majority of Jews today, they are not halachically Jews. And so they need to...
When did we switch to maternal lines?
During the Crusades. During the Crusades in Europe, after many Jewish communities were destroyed and women were raped and had babies, but nobody knew who the father is. Before that, Judaism went through the father, which is the tradition that they still continue in China. Masha? Say something? You're still here.
I'm here. No, I think it was good to kind of cover it again because you went through it so quickly just to let us understand. But I understand that kids, hello, good morning. I understand that the state of Israel is actually recognizing them as halachically Jews.
So in a second. Again, 1,000 people today living in China, trying to still keep the Jewish traditions, although in today's China, it's kind of hard because today's China is a very secular country. They basically hate every religion, Judaism included. And so this community, they're having hard times in like recent time, the last year or two, the government is kind of closing this entire deal. Now over here, you can see them trying to sing Hatikva, the anthem of the state of Israel. It's really cute. Hope you can hear it. Can you hear it? Masha, do you have sound?
Yes, we can hear.
Now think about it. Those people are sitting there in China, basically in the same place, for 1,000 years. We document 1,000 years.
Wait, we cannot hear you though.
what I'm saying is that these people are sitting in China for 1,000 years, a documented 1,000 years. And after a millennia, they're sitting there around the table, singing Hatikva, and this is kind of exciting. Now, those girls, they came to Israel something like 3 years ago from Kaifeng to go through Giyur, the process of joining the Jewish people, and eventually become halachic Jews. The state of Israel does not recognize this community as being like Jewish from the point of view of a land. Yeah.
Can you just, I don't know if everybody knows what Gior means. Can you explain?
Sure. Here
Conversion.
I appear again.
Conversion. Just say conversion. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they need to go through conversion in order to make Aliyah, to come and live in Israel, but they do it like happily because, again, they are missing the tradition. They want to know, they want to get all this knowledge. So basically, they are very happy to go to Jewish school and study as much as possible. Now, those 5 girls came here 3 years ago, more or less, went through conversion, and 2 of them just got married in Jerusalem in front of the Western Wall, which is kind of exciting. So again, 1,000 Jews sitting in the east of China until this very day, looking 100% Chinese, and yet completely belonging to our own family. Just like I have a picture, for example, of my grandfather, I can hold a picture of one of their old people, and this is basically the same idea. But now, for something even stranger, a different community, different people. From China, we are going kind of south to the east of India. And at the very east of India, in an area called Manipur, there's a group of people who are called Bnei Menashe, the sons or the children of Menashe. And this is really a weird story. So it goes like this. 50 years ago, more or less, during the war of Yom Kippur here in Israel in 1973, Golda Meir, the prime minister of Israel back then, she gets a letter from India written in English saying strange things. It says, "Hello, Prime Minister of Israel. We're not exactly sure what's your name, or never mind. So we are the tribe of Menashe. We were exiled from the ancient kingdom of Israel 2,700 years ago. And now we live here in Manipur, in the very east of India, and we heard that the Jewish people, that the tribe of Judah, came back and reestablished Jewish independence. So if you please can help us to get home, we will be very grateful." In Israel, this is war, and nobody has time to deal with strange letters from India. So Golda Meir just goes like, and keeps living her life. But then, after 20 years more or less, another letter comes again to Israel saying basically the same. "Hello, Prime Minister of Israel, whoever you are." We're not sure exactly what's his name, but never mind. So we are the tribe of Menashe living in eastern India. And we wrote you 25 years ago, you didn't reply, probably you forgot. So we just decided to remind you that we are still in India, and we will be very happy if you can take us from India and bring us home, please, to Dalaba. Now, that prime minister in the 90s is the same as today, Bibi Netanyahu. He had the one term in the 90s. And he gets the letter, he sees it, but instead of just going like, bah, he takes the letter and he gives it to one of his aides, to a guy called Michael. Just gives the guy and says, deal with that. And Michael dealt with it. He actually created an entire organization dedicated to search and connect to all kind of distant Jewish communities. So he actually went there to the east of India, and he actually found those people called Bnei Menashe, the sons of the children of Menashe. And now pause. 3,000 years ago, which is ton and ton of time ago. Here in the land of Israel, you have the people of Israel, who are divided to 12 different tribes. One of those tribes is us, the tribe of Judah, Shevet Yehuda, who lived in the land of Judea, Eretz Yehuda, Harei Yehuda, the Judean mountains, which is basically the landscape out of my window. But we had another 11 tribes. One of those was the tribe of Menashe. They have different history from us, because just as they wrote 2,700 years ago in a war against an empire, the Assyrian Empire, they were exiled from their land and thrown far away from here, disappearing. They plus another 9 tribes, and they became the 10 lost tribes of Israel. But the tribe of Menashe kind of found themselves 50 years ago. And this is their story. And now some images from this story. Tam 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 tam. Haha. So this is the tribe of Menashe sitting in India. They are Hebrews or the people of Israel, but they are not Jews. They are not from the tribe of Judah. They are Menashe, a different type of Hebrew people, different type of people of Israel, a different tribe. So you can see that they are wearing talit and tefillin, but they look kind of Asian. This is Manipur, at the very east of India, somewhere on the other side of Bangladesh. And this is a map describing the lands of the ancient tribes living here in the land of Israel 3,000 years ago. Now, if you read a bit of Hebrew, you can see that this kind of brownish area at the south is called Yehuda, Judea. And kind of yellow greenish area at the center, the large one, from the both sides of the river Jordan is called Menashe, because this is the place where the tribe of Menashe used to live.
Boris,
yeah.
If you go back to the previous slide, can you move your cursor and see if we could, if we can see your cursor?
I don't have a cursor here.
Well, okay.
It's an iPad. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Anyhow, the tribe of Menashe living in the middle of this map to the right, and then something terrible happens and they disappear. They plus the other 9 tribes. But we never forgot them. Our lost brothers, the 10 lost tribes of Israel, we never forgot them. And we actually believed, we, the tribe of Judah, we actually believed that one of the days, as the Messiah is coming, just before him, the 10 tribes will come back again. We actually had a lot of legends saying that they live somewhere at the far east, on the other side of a magical river called Sambatyon, and that they have powerful kingdoms. And maybe one of the days where the Jewish people, the tribe of Judah, us, we are in some serious trouble, those 10 tribes will come and they save us. And that they never came. But again, the tribe of Menashe, they found themselves. Now this is Golda Meir, breathing smoke, and this is Michael sitting in the middle of a group of Menashe kids. Now again, you see them and you don't think about like the Hebrew people, the Israelites, and yet they are. And they have their kippas and they are another Hebrew tribe. Now this is a strange thing that I'm saying, but in a moment about this strangeness. They also are not considered to be halachic Jews, and they also need to go through conversion in order to come here to Israel. Speaking about numbers, more or less 1 million of them live over there in the east of India, 1 million people. But out of this 1 million people, only 10,000, which is a very small percentage, actually want to go back again, to come back here, to reconnect to the roots. Everybody else is happy in India. So out of these 10,000, more or less half, 5,000 are actually here in Israel. And when they come here, they actually want to give back to the state of Israel. So they are going to the army, they're going to the most combat units. And here you have 2 Israeli soldiers from the tribe of Menashe in the middle of some desert here in Israel.
I enjoyed teaching it because I felt like this is something that I know and that I can.
Ow. Hi now. Tam 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 tam.
All good, all good. Keep going.
Do you see me? Ha. Something strange happened.
There you are.
So, something strange happened because suddenly I began to speak in terms of tribes. Now, if you look at this screen where you can see all of us, basically what you see is a group of white people. Just look at us. We are white European Ashkenazi Jews, or most of us. I'm white.
Colonizers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm white as this piece of paper. You can compare basically same color. And yet suddenly I'm speaking about tribes and us being a tribe and kind of woo. And at the beginning, weird. But when you think about it, not weird, because we are not white. It's just something that happened with time, just like the Jews in China became Asian looking. We are here from the Middle East, and we are a tribe, a Bedouin tribe that 3,000 years ago decided just to stop and to create himself a kingdom. And then a lot happened, and 3,000 years later, here we are. So we belong to the tribe of Judah, most of us. Among us, some people belong to the tribe of Levi, Levi'im, who served in the temple in Jerusalem and lived in cities all over the ancient Jewish kingdoms. And so when the kingdom of Israel in the north disappeared, the kingdom of Judea in the south survived. This is us, plus the Levites who lived among us.
I have a question.
We are, yeah, of course.
Sorry, this is you're so much, it's so cool. What happened?
Maya, is that you?
Yeah, what do you think it is? Hi, boy. My question to you is, what happened to all the other tribes, like the Asher, Benjamin? Where are they? Those tribes.
Okay. So a few words back, again, just to frame this. 2,700 years ago, here in the land of Israel, you have 12 tribes living, each one on its land. Politically speaking, two kingdoms. One of them is the kingdom of Judea, which is basically us plus some Levites, and the kingdom of Israel, which is basically everybody else. 2,700 years ago, the kingdom of Israel is destroyed, and the people who lived in this kingdom, the 10 other tribes, were sent somewhere to the east, or at least some of them.
How were they
Probably,
destroyed?
what?
How were they destroyed?
In a war against the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians came, defeated them, and then, just as they did usually in the ancient Middle East, threw them away. The idea was...
Can you share a screen and show us all the tribes again?
It will take a moment, but yes.
So you're telling me that if you go on your screen for a second, the tribe of Judah, there were two kingdoms, the Israelites and the Judah. The Israelites basically were a collection of all those other, like Asher and Benjamin and all Manasseh and all that, right?
Yep.
And so what happened, we're looking at a smoking Golda Meir, okay? All right, great, yes. No, not that. No, go to the tribes, the one on Israel.
This is it now.
Yes. So you guys, I just, because they can't read Hebrew, a lot, I don't know, maybe some of you can. So you're saying that on the bottom is Yehuda, that one is Yehuda, and
Yeah,
all
the brownish one.
the brownish one, and all those ones on top, like Benjamin, Ephraim, Dan, Manasseh, these were part of the Israelite kingdom.
Yep.
And they were wiped away during a war.
Completely.
Completely.
Okay, or actually not completely. I'm kind of, let's roll back half a second. Probably what happened to them is that they were defeated, and then the Assyrians, they took the leadership. They took like the aristocracy, the rich and famous, and these are the people that they sent away. Some of the people just working the land, some of the simple folk actually survived and continued to live there, but the Assyrians brought people from different nations, people who were defeated in different places, and put them at the place of those guys that they just exiled. And they mixed together and kind of disappeared on us, eventually becoming Samaritans. But this is a different story now, for
So
a different evening.
Okay, I understand. So the only ones that right now we can really trace back is to Yehuda.
Which is us.
Us, correct. Okay, thank you.
Yehuda, plus some people of the tribe of Levi who live among us. If your last name is Levi, Levinson, Levit, whatever, or Cohen, Katz, Kaganovich, that means that you are basically from a different tribe. The 10 other tribes, other than Judah and Levi, were somewhere for almost 3,000 years, until the tribe of Manasseh found themselves only 50 years ago. And again, 10,000 of those people, and again, 5,000 of the tribe of Manasseh actually live in Israel after conversion, and they are happy to give back to the state of Israel, serving in the army and everything. And they are very cute people. Like seriously, they're super, super nice. So a tiny story, and then we are going to Zimbabwe. And the story goes like this. I'm tour guide, among other things. And a few years ago, I'm walking in the old city of Jerusalem, basically sitting on the floor in the Jewish quarter with a group of people, when suddenly I am surrounded by a group looking just like the Manasseh people. And I can see that, okay, those are Manasseh people, sitting on the floor, not so far from us, and crying. 40 people, like old people, sitting, weeping with tears. Now, my guys is a group of young Israelis, and I kind of stopped this entire situation. I'm going to the Manasseh people, and I'm asking them if somebody wants to share their story. And one of the old guys actually stands up, comes back with me to the Israelis, And he says, while crying completely, this is my home. And I was missing this home for 2,700 years. And now I'm here again. We just came here, he said. We just landed like a week ago. And this is our first time in Jerusalem. And I don't have the words to explain how I feel. And he's crying and we are crying. It's like, 2,700 years of missing home. And now to something maybe even more strange. But before that, how we understood that these are actually Menashe people and not some random people claiming to be Menashe. So after we got the letter, and after, there's a cat behind you, Masha, be careful. So after we got the letter, we began sending all kinds of expeditions. Rabbis and archaeologists and anthropologists, a lot of people went there to Manipur to spend times with those tribes, with those groups, and just explore them. And eventually, they got to the conclusion that these are actually Menashe people. A lot of rabbis went there also. And the Menashe people, they have a tradition, they have a memory, saying that after they were defeated in a terrible war, they were thrown from some eastern country. From their perspective, Israel is in the east. And first of all, they reached China. They walked a lot until they found themselves in China, where they suffered a lot. Unlike the people of Kaifeng, they actually suffered in China. And they lost their book of law. They lost their Torah scrolls. And then from China, they went to the south a bit, sat down in Manipur, where life was probably nicer until this very day. And again, if I'm going to a bus in Jerusalem and I'm sitting next to a Menashe person, he's a guy from a different Hebrew tribe. And yes, in the 21st century, we are speaking here in terms of tribes. Woo. But if you will go to Africa, in the very, yes, Masha.
Just have a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say Hebrew, is that what we here in America call Israelites?
Yes.
Okay. Just.
So if you go to the south of Africa, there's a country there called Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe in the local language means great building of stone. And Zimbabwe is called Zimbabwe because in Zimbabwe, they have a Zimbabwe. They have a great building of stone. And this great building of stone in Zimbabwe is actually called the Great Zimbabwe, which means the great, great building of stone. And Masha, I see the desperation in your eyes. Anyhow, I'll show it to you in a second. And this is basically a beautiful round fortress that nobody knows who built. It's kind of amazing. It's the largest stone structure, ancient stone structure to the south of the equation in Africa. And it is called the Great Zimbabwe, the Great, Great Stone Building, because around it, it has a lot of tiny Zimbabwes. This is Africa. In the south of it, you can see Zimbabwe. And this is Zimbabwe. And in Zimbabwe, you have rhinos and zebras and giraffes. And also you have amazing waterfalls and you have amazing people. And you have the Great Zimbabwe. This is it. A round fortress sitting in an area with a lot of other tiny stone buildings. This is it again. This is it again. It's round, round and stony and beautiful. And these are the people who live around this Great Zimbabwe. They're called Lemba people. And if you ask them, of course, they built it more or less 1,000 years ago. Now, the Lemba people, it's something like 70, 80,000 people today. This is how they look in their daily lives. This is how they look on a Shabbat. Tam, tam, tam. Because apparently the Lemba people in Zimbabwe are also part of the Jewish nation. This is one of their chiefs or rabbis or rabbi chiefs, and he has an elephant. He has a stick with an elephant. I want a stick with an elephant. I don't have a stick with an elephant. I only have an elephant. Anyhow, and these guys in Zimbabwe, they have a tradition. The Lemba people, they have a tradition. And they say that many, many generations ago, they came from a faraway northern land. After a terrible catastrophe, they began to walk to the south. And their God, one God, they have only one God, which is everywhere, and you cannot see it, and they don't have any statues or anything of that sort. Their God kind of supported them and helped them and went with them. So they are walking south. They remember that they went through a place called Sana, although they don't know exactly what it is or where it is, and they can't show it on a map. Until after a long, long travel, they reached Zimbabwe. Now, what you see right now is basically a screenshot from Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever, where I asked, how can I go from my home in Tkoa to Zimbabwe by foot or by car? And these are the paths that Google gave me. So basically what I can do is walk to Egypt and then go down through Sudan and Ethiopia and eventually go all the way to the south until I found myself in Zimbabwe. But this is kind of problematic because if you look at Egypt or Sudan, this is a huge desert. It's bad, dangerous land, and basically I will dry out and die long before I reach the green mountains and plains of Ethiopia. Another way, which is kind of more smart, is go on the coast of Saudi Arabia. Now, it may look strange in the beginning, but basically this coast of the Arabian Peninsula, it has a lot of springs and it has a lot of water. And I just walk nicely until I reach Yemen. And in Yemen, a city called Sana'a. And all I need to do is to cross the Red Sea, to go to the other side, and I found myself in Ethiopia. I kind of went all around the desert. It's a smart thing to do. Probably 2,000 years ago, maybe even before that, we don't know. A group of Jewish people from here, from Judea, began to walk south. And they actually walked through the coast of Saudi Arabia. They actually crossed the Red Sea on the other direction, not like in the Exodus and Passover and Moses and everything. They actually went back to Ethiopia and all the way down to Zimbabwe eventually. And as they were walking, they took with them this thing, the Ark, they call it, with the book of laws that also disappeared during time, but they still remember the way their Ark used to look like. And here are some more Lemba people, and you can see again the shield of David, a very Jewish symbol, and an elephant, not so much Jewish symbol, and yet a cool one. So the Lemba people. And again, I'm taking a plane to China. I'm sitting with the Jews of Kaifeng, and they are my brothers. They belong to my tribe. I go to these people in Africa, which look completely different, sit with them together, and probably these are also my brothers, also part of the Jewish nation. Now these guys, they are not only have their memory of belonging to the Jewish people or coming from here, they also have Jewish traditions or Jewish-like traditions, which means that they stop on the Shabbat. Each Shabbat, they just kind of freeze and stop working. They have this one God that you cannot feel and everything. They don't eat any unkosher things like seafood and everything. They won't eat it. Pork, of course not. And also, somebody actually checked their genome, their genes. And there's a theory saying that one of the families of the tribe of Levi, a Jewish tribe that still exists among us, among the tribe of Judah, they have some unique DNA code. They have some unique genes. It's kind of undecided yet, and scientists argue about it. But this specific sequence was also found within the Lemba people in South Africa. So again, one more evidence or kind of evidence that they actually belong to the same family, which is again our family, which is cool. At the same time,
they have the Ark still? The Covenant?
No, they don't have the original Ark, but they do have a copy of it in the National Museum of Zimbabwe, which translates to English as the National Museum of the Great Stone Building, which is cool. So, China, India, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, and now to something a bit different. Because when you go up from Africa to the Mediterranean, in the middle of the Mediterranean, or at the edge of the Mediterranean, there's a country called Portugal. And in Portugal, there's a village called Belmonte. Belmonte means in Portuguese, a beautiful mountain. And look at it, it is beautiful. A beautiful town. It sits over here, kind of northeast of Portugal, somewhere on the mountain. This is Belmonte, it's nice. This is, again, Belmonte, again, nice. This is beautiful. And this is beautiful. And this is also beautiful and scary at the same time. And look at these people. Now, it looks as an image from some horror movie. They're kind of scary, wearing all white in some basement, but actually, those are the Jews of Belmonte, the secret Jews of Belmonte, making their matzah, making the special Passover bread with a device just in front of them. And they have a crazy story, which goes something like that. 500 years ago, Jews were exiled from Spain. The Spanish kings, they made this law saying that in 3 months, all the Jews of Spain need to leave or convert to Catholic Christianity. Most of us left, some of us converted to Christianity, some of us stayed in Spain pretending to be Christians, which ended badly for most of them. At the same time, Portugal, the country next door, they didn't do anything like that because they actually understood that Jews are good for economy and Jews give all kind of benefits to the kings and everything. So we don't want to harm our Jews, said the Portuguese people. Until 5 years later, the Spanish kings came to them and said, remember Jews? Can you please kick them out? And the Portuguese had no choice. So the king of Portugal, he did something actually, you may say, more cruel than the kings of Spain. He pronounced the same. He said, you know what, Jews, you have 3 months to leave or convert to Christianity, whatever you choose. But when the majority of the Jews of Portugal went to the ports of the country, of the kingdom, expecting to find ships and leave the place because they actually didn't want to convert, they wanted to go away, instead of ships to take them to other countries, what they found was Catholic priests. They were just pushed into the central squares of those cities, of the coastal cities, and some Catholic priests on the balcony above them kind of spread some drops of holy water and declared everybody on the square to be Catholic. Nobody asked them. They were converted by force. And the second it happened, they need to stay Catholics. Otherwise, the Inquisition comes and they will burn, and it will end very badly for them. So the Jews of Portugal.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
just a question. Why,
Sure.
like, why did he decide that? Why didn't he just let them leave if they, like, what?
Because Jews, first of all, thank you for the question. The Jews in Portugal, just like Jews in other places in the world, we were good for the local economy. We were people who knew how to read and write. We were people who knew how to count. We had all kind of gold and possessions. We could trade them. We knew other Jews in other countries. So that we actually were a people who are at the same time a banking system. If you wanted to travel from Portugal to China, you could just come to the local Jew, give him like 100 pesos in gold, and he will give you a letter saying in Hebrew, whoever gets this letter, please give this guy 95 pesos in gold. And you take the letter and you go all the way to China without carrying some gold on the way and, you know, with the risk of robbers and bandits and everything. And the Jews on the other side of the planet will read in Hebrew the same letter and will give you money, and we are good for economy. And once in a while, which happened kind of a lot in European history, when some king needed money, he could just squeeze his Jews, like demanding tremendous amounts of money like tomorrow, or just exiling all the Jews, taking all the belongings that we left behind us, and then after a few years, kind of allowing us to go back again and to begin gather money and everything again. We were good for the local economy. And the kings kind of understood that sometime. The king of Portugal understood that. And when his neighbors demanded him to kick us out, he didn't want to do that. But he found a way not to. He converted us by force. And the Jews of Portugal, the former Jews of Portugal, that now suddenly, unexpected for themselves, became Christian, they face a very hard choice because we still cannot leave. For several years later, they didn't allow us out. So we need to pretend that we are actually Christian. Otherwise, again, the Inquisition comes and we burn in fire. Some of us pretended, some of us actually accepted Christianity. Some of us left the second they got the opportunity. And some of us pretended, but then after several generations, forgot that they are pretending and became actually Catholic Christians. And now we are going to this village of Belmonte in Portugal. More or less 100 years ago, it's 1917, there's an engineer, just a guy coming to Belmonte to work. And he is a Jew from Poland. He just went to Portugal because he's a mining engineer and this is an area of mountains and mines and everything. And he goes to the market, just to the local market in Belmonte, and he goes to a stand of tomatoes. And he checks the tomatoes, okay, red, nice, interesting, okay, tomatoes. And then he crosses the market to a different stand. Now the guy at the second stand kind of pulls him aside and he says to him, you know what? I saw that you checked the tomatoes of that guy over there. Don't buy them. Why? Asks the Jewish engineer from Poland. Well, because that guy, he's a Jew. Now, in Portugal back then, 1917, there is a tiny Jewish community in Lisbon, in the capital city, mostly Jews coming from all around the world, but in the countryside, no Jewish people at all. Everybody is Catholic, churches all over the place. What? And so this Polish engineer, he runs to the first guy and he says, Shalom, ma kore, ach sheli, bon daber etcha ivrit, ma hamatzav kapara alecha. Or basically a lot of Israeli ways of saying, yo, I love you, let's talk. And the guy, the Jewish trader, the guy who sells the tomatoes in the market, he goes like, no, I'm not Jewish. I'm not Jewish. I am not Jewish. See, this is a pork. I'm eating it. See, no. I'm not a Jewish person, not at all. I'm closing my shop right now. I'm going to the church to pray. I'm not Jewish at all. Not Jewish. Which was kind of overreaction. Strange, kind of. The Polish Jew didn't give up. And so he kind of catches that guy and tries to squeeze him and blah, 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 until eventually he proves himself to be Jewish. He says, I'm asking because I'm myself a Jew. I came from Poland. Here, you see, I'm speaking Hebrew, blah, 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 blah. And the local Portuguese guy, he got convinced. And so he's taking his new friend to his village, to Belmonte, to the women of Belmonte. And apparently the entire village, the entire place, everybody is Jewish. It's a village of Jews who went undercover 500 years ago. Well, back then it's 400 years ago. And kept their Jewish identity in the underground while hiding, not as a person and not as a family, as an entire community. They didn't have any text, because if the Inquisition sees a Jewish text, you are of course a Jew and we will burn you in the center of the village. So they remembered whatever they could remember in their minds. And well, now it's time to be honest. Guys, boys, men, people like me, sometimes we are kind of stupid. Like the box, it has limited capacity. But women, again, to be honest, they remember more easily. Kind of while we are running around hunting mammoths, whatever, they actually remember things. And in Belmonte, the women of the community became keepers of memory. They remembered. They didn't remember Hebrew anymore. They translated whatever they could to Portuguese. They kept some traditions. They kept some holidays. And the most important holiday that they still kept was Pesach, Passover, the holiday of freedom and coming from slavery to freedom. Again, because they are in a situation of slavery. They had their own tradition. For example, before Passover, they used to go down the mountain to the river, to the local river, and they would cross this river, symbolically repeating the exodus from Egypt, and hoping that one day this is something that will happen to them also. They created matzah in their basements, and they pretended all this time, they pretended all this time to be completely Catholic, going to church, knowing all the Catholic prayers by heart and everything. They would marry only among themselves. And the women of the community used to keep kind of closer to home, which is basically the case in Portugal in general. Men would kind of travel more. And once in a while, the men of the community, they had to do not Jewish things, such as eating pork. For example, they are visiting the next village and everybody's having dinner outside with pork and whatever. So they also must join them unless they want to be suspected as Jews. And if one of the men of the community in Belmonte would eat pork, he would need to sit on the mountain just in front of the village for several weeks until the women allow him back in, just to wait for the pork to go through the system, whatever, for weeks. And so you could come to Belmonte and see a lot of dudes sitting on the mountains around it, and those are people who ate pork, and now they're being punished.
Wait, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
If they were undercover and people thought they were Catholic, then then why? How come the guy who told the Polish Jew knew that man was Jewish?
That's a fine question, and I can't answer it. Probably some of the secret kind of spilled out of their community. Maybe their closest neighbors knew, I don't know. But they did whatever they could to keep it in secret. And when his new friend, the guy from the market, brings this Polish Jewish engineer to the women of the community, they actually don't believe that he is also a Jew. They are sure that the Jewish people disappeared in the world, that they themselves are the last Jews in the universe. And when he tries to convince them, they still don't believe him because they don't speak Hebrew anymore. And when he recites all kind of prayers, they just don't understand him until he says one sentence. And this is kind of the only sentence that they remembered in Hebrew. And this is the most like central sentence in the Hebrew universe. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, God is our God, God is one. Now they heard that, they recognized one of the words, Adonai, which is a word that is still used, and suddenly they understand that there is a Jewish people and that they are not the last group of it. They are not the last survivors. 100 years later, the community of Belmont.
The other reason, Lisa, somebody might say, "Oh, you're a Jew." It was maybe the two merchants were fighting with each other, and this was just a way to like discredit him.
Absolutely, maybe this is just a curse. Like, no, he is a Jew.
Yeah, just a garden variety anti-Semitism.
So the community still exists 100 years later, and today they have their own synagogue and they can be Jews completely open. In a second, I'll show you some images from there. Tam 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 tam. And actually today they have another issue because today living openly as Jews, they are accepting the mainstream Jewish ideas and the mainstream Jewish like, customs and traditions, and they are losing their own way of being Jews. Their own special Belmonte tradition is disappearing. And they are kind of living in this dilemma and this inner discussion of how to be Jews. So here, this is again the village, the white building at the center, kind of in a distance, this is their synagogue. And those are the Jews of Belmonte in this synagogue. Again, those guys for 400 years pretended not to be Jews, were Jewish people underground. And again, some people of Belmonte. And now to something completely different. In the middle of the Mediterranean, actually not different, but in the middle of the Mediterranean, there's a place called Mallorca. And in Mallorca, an island in the Mediterranean belonging to Spain, a Jewish community, of course. This is the place. It's kind of beautiful and amazing and beautiful. Not so beautiful, because even before the kings of Spain expelled their Jews, Mallorca people, they did the same, like a generation or two generations before the Spanish people. And the idea is the same idea. They said to the Jews of Mallorca, you have some time to leave or to convert to Christianity, no other option. Some of us left, few of us converted to Christianity, some of us stayed in Mallorca pretending to be Christian. But when you are pretending to be Christian, when you actually accepted Christianity, even if you didn't mean it, even if somebody made you do it, you are still considered to be a Catholic Christian. And if you suddenly follow some other tradition, the Inquisition will come. The Inquisition is like the religious police of the Catholic Church, and they will punish you. And this is the way this punishment looks like. So those fires happen in Portugal and in Spain and in Mallorca also. People are being discovered to be secret Jews, and this is the meaning. This is how it ends. Or this is how it ends, or this is how it ends, or this is how it ends. This is the city of Mallorca. And you can see in red the former Jewish neighborhood. This is the place where the Jews of Mallorca used to live. Again, some left, some converted to Christianity, some pretended to be Christian. The greenhouses, the two large greenhouses, are the former synagogues of the Jews of the place that turned into churches when the Jews were expelled. And the purple, kind of purple bluish house, kind of at the upper part, this is the place where the Inquisition sat. Because 200 years after the king or prince or whatever they had in Mallorca decided that the Jews need to go, 200 years, the Inquisition comes to Mallorca. They come to the city and they began their investigation looking for secret Jews. And after a while, and actually they sat there for several years, investigating the community, asking questions, torturing people, whatever, they actually found a few dozen Jews, hidden Jews, 200 years after they were converted. And those people were burned on a fire in the center of the city. But when the investigation is over, the Inquisition does something strange. I don't know another case that they did the same. What they did is to come to the main church of the city and proclaim that 15 families in the city are suspected to be Jews. They couldn't prove it, but they suspect those 15 families as Jews. And here, says the Inquisition, is the list of the families. Here are the family names. And they just put a list on a wall and left. This is the 17th century. It's 400 years ago. And all this time, those 400 years, this group of families was isolated. The local people didn't want anything to do with them because they were suspected as Jews. And the thing is that the Spanish Inquisition, they were completely right. Those 15 families actually were hidden Jews. And today, this is a group of 20,000 people still living there. Nobody married them. They married only among themselves. Each marriage is registered in the local church because with time, most of them, well, all of them actually became Catholics. And so today, if one of these former Jews or hidden Jews of Mallorca wants to come to Israel, they don't need to go to conversion. They don't need to do Giyur, because by maternal lines, eventually back then, 400 years ago, there is a Jewish woman. Anyhow, look at this picture. What you see here today is the main door of one of the churches of Mallorca. But there is this alley, this tiny passage between the church and the next building. And in this tiny alley, through the last 400 years, Jews used to do like this. You are going through this alley and you are touching the wall. You are touching the wall because this building used to be a synagogue, one of the synagogues of the Jewish community. And the hidden Jews of the city, maybe the less Jewish thing that they could do openly is to touch the stone, to remember by this simple touch of your hand with this brown stone of the wall. Today, you can actually see lines in the stone created by the hands, the fingers of all those generations of hidden Jews. And these are the Jews of Mallorca today. This is how they look like. Some of them, most of them are still very much Christian, very much Catholic, but some of them actually decided to go back to the roots of their families and to become Jews again. And they just declare, you know what, from now on, I am a Jew again. And as I said, no conversion or everything. Anyhow, if you go today to Spain or Portugal or Mallorca, you can see strange things. You can see a house, an ancient house. When you go in, suddenly first thing that you see is a huge piece of dried pork, just a half of pig hanged from the ceiling. You basically bang your head against it. And it's like 400 years old, it's hard like stone. And the reason for that is that the family that lives in this house are actually hidden Jews. Maybe they forgot, maybe they themselves don't know why they live like that. The pig is hanged there from ages before them. They keep it there because their grandparents kept it there. But the original people, they just put it there to show their neighbors that they're not Jewish, because Jews were not allowed to eat pork. In Spain or Portugal or Mallorca or Mexico or Brazil or the United States, sometimes you can have families each Friday, like typical Spanish family. But each Friday, the mother of the family goes into the closet and lights 2 candles. She has no idea why. She forgot. But basically, she does what her grandmother did, and her grandmother, and her grandmother, and eventually you go to the grandmother that knew that she is lighting the Shabbat candles. You have families who, for example, the kids of the families, and I have friends like this in Israel today, like openly Jewish people and everything, but in some communities, people who came from Spain, Portugal, and so on, kids are not allowed to point to the stars, which is a strange thing. Like if you have a 5-year-old kid running around and pointing to the sky, his mother will come and say, don't do that, you're not allowed to do that. And when the kid goes like, why? She gives him some strange answer, like your finger will hurt or whatever. And the reason for that is that while some Jews were hiding in the Spanish or the Portuguese Empire from the Inquisition, you know that Shabbat is over when you have 3 stars in the sky. And Jewish kids, until this very day, like my neighbors, they do it all the time, every week. They run out screaming and they're just pointing and they're counting the stars. 1, 2, 3. And they run back home like, Mom, Shabbat is done. The neighbors, the Catholic neighbors, they know all of that. And they know that if the Gonzalez kids or the Juarez kids or the Fernandez kids each Saturday evening are pointing to the sky, that means that Fernandez family is actually a Jewish family. And that means that the Fernandez family will burn. And so kids are not allowed to point. And you still have tiny Spanish kids in Spain today, or again, Mexico or Texas, who are not allowed to point to the sky. And they have no idea why. They are completely Catholics today. They forgot that they have Jewish roots. But you have still several signs that show that originally, way back many generations ago, somebody there was actually Jewish. And now to something completely different. Tam 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 tam. So hello, this is Peru, which is a lovely country in South America. And this is a pyramid of the local empire, the Inca Empire or the Aztec Empire, one of them, don't remember which. And the following story, wait, spoiler. And the following story is actually maybe the weirdest of them all. Just a second, want to see you. So first of all, few words. There is an organization called Shavei Israel, the Returns of Israel. And this organization, what they do is to connect with all kinds of distant Jewish communities, just like the people, or not just like, the people that I told you about. And they are sitting in Jerusalem and they have lectures and meetings and seminars and everything. And I am a good friend of them. They are good friends of me. Sometimes I go to their lectures. And the following story, it sounds as if I'm making it up as I speak, but actually happened, heard it from the original, and you'll see in a minute. So, Peru, the middle of the jungle, an ancient pyramid, and under this pyramid, some Indian tribes, not Jewish at all, just local Indian tribes sitting there for many generations. They are Catholics, but they still have some pagan traditions, some memories from the times they were the Inca or the Aztec Empire. So it's Christianity mixed with everything. And one of the days in the 1960s, like 50 years ago, one of the chiefs of one of these tribes, he reads the New Testament. Now again, they are kind of Catholic because they are under the Spanish rule for centuries. So he reads the New Testament and then he just does like this. This is the New Testament. He reads it and then blah, blah, blah. Oh, he turns some pages backwards and he sees that there's an Old Testament before the new one. And in the Old Testament, you have a lot of rules, tons and tons of laws. Do like that, don't do like that. Eat this, don't eat that. A lot of things that just direct your life. And he understands that he does absolutely nothing of that. And nobody canceled it. Nobody ever said, don't do that. God came and said to the people, you have to eat this thing or don't eat. And this guy in the middle of the jungle, completely amazed, he says, oh my God, my Christianity is wrong. This is the way to live. So he goes outside, he calls everybody and he says, okay, guys, we are starting over. See that book? We need to follow it. And so in the middle of the jungle, they begin to live by the Jewish law without understanding that they are living by the Jewish law. And they try to understand it as much as they can, because of course, reading it in the middle of the jungle, some things are getting lost. But anyway, they are living by the Jewish law in the middle of the jungle. And one of the days they decide to bring this discovery to their neighbors, and they go to the tribe next door, which is just like them, Catholics plus all kind of ancient traditions. And they come to them and they say, guys, we understood something. Our Christianity was wrong. See, we have a new agenda. We have a new idea. Follow us. But the tribe next door says, no, you're strange people. You say strange things. We don't like you. Go back home. So they are sad and miserable. They understand that they just discovered some amazing discovery. They saw the light, but nobody is following them. So they have this idea. And this is the part where it gets like super strange. They know that in the world, there are people called the Jews. And they know that for centuries, one of the main goals of Christianity was to make the Jews convert to Christianity. And they failed all over the place. The Jews were fighting, running away, hiding, pretending, whatever. The Jews didn't accept the Christian idea. And now this tribe of Indians in Peru, in the shade of the pyramid, they say, of course they didn't. That was their own Christianity. We pushed them the wrong thing. Now we saw the light. We understand that we need to live by these strange laws that we found in the book. We will go find some Jews, show them our truth, our version of Christianity. Of course, they will convert like this. And then everybody will love us and everybody will follow us and we will be the greatest tribe ever, yo. And so they send a delegation of 4 Indians, the chief of the tribe plus 3 friends, and they go to Lima, the capital of Peru, to search for Jews. They have no idea who the Jews are. They don't know how the Jews look like. They never saw a Jew. So in Lima, they go to the city market and they ask, have you ever seen a Jew? They say. And the local sellers in the market say, well, yeah, of course, yeah, we did. Where are the Jews? Show me the Jews. I need to see a Jew. And the local people, they say, well, I don't know. They kind of just people living here. I don't know. But you know what? See that building on the hill? This is their synagogue. So they are having all kinds of ceremonies there each Friday afternoon when the sun sets. Go there Friday afternoon and you will find your Jews. And so 4 Indians from the jungles, from the shade of the pyramid of the Inca people, standing on the doors of the synagogue of Lima, the capital of Peru, at Shabbat evening. And they have a plan. They say that they will go in with all these Jews, sit in the middle of the event, whatever it is. And as the Jewish people will do whatever they do in the synagogue, at the very middle, the 4 Indians will jump up and they're like, whoa, listen to our truth. See 1, 2, 3 and the laws and blah, 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 blah. Follow us because we saw the light and we are the actual Christianity. And they expect the Jews to say, oh my God, you're so right. Of course we are following you. We have seen the light. Lead us towards the light. But as the Jews are gathering in the synagogue and going in, those 4 Indians, they see that they have a problem in their plan. Something that they couldn't predict. Because all those strange Jews that are going in, they have those tiny round heads on their heads. And the Indians, they don't. So, of course, this is suspicious. Otherwise, of course, nobody will suspect. But without the kippah, without the round head, they are looking strange and everybody will suspect them and the plan will fail. Nobody will follow them, blah, blah, blah. It's a crisis. But hi, they have a solution. So they just take their handkerchiefs, nasavei plotki, yeah, tie the corners, put on their heads. And now you have 4 Indians from the jungle with nasavei plotki on their heads, going into the synagogue, pretending to belong to the crowd. We were always here. We are also Jews. Don't look at me strangely. I'm also you. Shalom, shalom, shalom. And they're sitting in the middle, waiting to the moment to jump and say, hey. And the Shabbat service begins. Now, the Shabbat service goes, basically it's like 3 parts. You may say that it has 3 parts. In the beginning, a lot of music. Everybody sings. Then somebody stands up. It can be the rabbi, it can be anybody else. And he says or she says something smart. And then after the person said something smart, you have another part, which is mostly words. So they are sitting through the first part. They, of course, don't know that they are parts, but they are sitting there in the middle. Everybody is singing. It's kind of nice. And it's not exactly the moment to jump with, hey! So they're waiting. And then the singing is done, and they're almost like, but then somebody stands up and begins to speak. Now, all the singing was Hebrew. Nobody, the Indians didn't understand. But the tiny like speech, when somebody says something smart, he says it or she in the language of the community, which is Spanish. And so the rabbi or whoever speaks, explaining some sentence, some idea, whatever, and it actually makes sense. And those 4 Indians, they are sitting in the middle, and they're like, whoa, seriously? Whoa, I never thought about it. Whoa, oh my God. And actually, the opposite happened, because they go out of the synagogue without the hoo-hoo moment. They go back to their tribe in the shade of the pyramid in the middle of the jungle, saying, guys, we have to start over. Those people, they have it, like, they're right. We need to be like them. So forget everything. We are restarting. We are now Jewish people. Shalom, shalom, shalom. So they send people to the local Jewish community. They ask them to send teachers or whatever. The local Jews, they go like, but eventually they are convinced, and there is actually a connection. And this tribe of Indians in the middle of the jungles of Peru, they actually study Judaism. Actually sit and study. They accept the Jewish tradition, now understanding that this is the Jewish tradition, begin to live like Jews, and they know that to become actual Jews, they need to convert. They need to go through a process, through a ceremony. So they write to Israel, to this organization, Shavei Israel, the Tons of Israel. And rabbis from Israel, they go to Peru to sit with them, to teach them a bit, and then to do the conversion ritual, which they do in the shade of the pyramid in the middle of the jungle. Now, part of the ritual, part of the giyur of conversion is going into a mikveh, a bath with water, to like spiritually clean yourself. Now, those guys in Peru, in the jungle, they don't have like a ritual true Jewish mikveh. What they do have is a pond, literally under the Inca pyramid, like in the shade of all kind of rule. And all of that, all of this craziness, I'm hearing in a lecture by the rabbi who does the conversion. And he shows us pictures of like himself and the Indians in the mikveh. And you can see that like 100 or 200 meters at the background, the trees in the jungle, they have painted skulls of people on them. Because I said in the beginning that the local people, the local tribes, they are like half Catholics, half whatever. So the whatever part, they still like put human skulls on trees, or at least used to, painting them in all kind of merry colors. But this is far away. Over here, like at the front, you have people actually going through conversion. Now, I'm sitting in this lecture with the rabbi telling me the story. And usually, suddenly enough, not many people come to the lectures of this organization. So it's literally me plus one more guy. Like two guys listen to the rabbi, two people. And suddenly the door is open and an Indian walks in. And I'm like, oh my God, an Indian. And then another one. And I'm like, oh my God, a second Indian, a third Indian, 14th Indian, 23rd Indian, 23 Indians walked in the middle of Jerusalem. They converted and now they want to live in Israel. The community is called Bnei Moshe, the sons of Moses, or the children of Moses, and some of them actually make Aliyah. They look like physically, their physical appearance, as the local Indian tribes, the local like, Native Americans of the Peru jungle. But they are dressed just like Orthodox Jews. So they have kippas and they have tzitzit and everything. And apparently this entire group, like 3 or 4 families, they heard that there's a lecture about themselves and they came to participate. And suddenly from a lecture about those strange people, it becomes like an evening of just memories. Yeah, you remember we were in the jungle, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. And I was sitting there completely in shock. And then something else happens because they're being very excited and everything. And they speak Hebrew with like heavy Spanish accent. But when they're like too excited, one of the women, she switches to Spanish and she's la, 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 la. Now in this room, everybody understands Spanish except of me and the other guy who came to the lecture. And the other guy, he says the following sentence that has 0 sense in the mind of the like 21st century Western civilization, but has 100% sense in the mind of Jewish civilization. When this woman switched to Spanish, the guy sitting next to me, he says to her, "Excuse me, can you please speak in Hebrew or English? Because I don't remember Spanish. I last spoke Spanish 500 years ago. I forgot. The last time I spoke Spanish was 500 years ago. I forgot. The last time I spoke Spanish was 500 years ago. I forgot since then." 500 years ago, his family probably lived somewhere in Spain, and then the exile and everything, blah, 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 blah. And he actually said this. Hi, not them, not whatever. This is my personal thing. The guy who lived 500 years ago in Spain and went through all this craziness is me. Of course, it's my grandparent, but at the same time, it's me. And this is a sentence that you cannot say in like the Western civilization today. But this is a sentence that you can say in every tribal society. Because tribes, the thing with us is that we don't have history, we have memory. And everything that happened to you and yesterday. But the story actually runs a bit deeper. Because today, people kind of researched the area and the place and the jungle, the pyramid and everything. And maybe, just maybe, there's a deeper layer of the same story. Now, everything I said about this group, about Bnei Moshe, put it aside for a second. It's on a shelf somewhere here.
Are we gonna meet
telling-
Bnei Moshe when we go to Israel?
What?
Are we gonna meet Bnei Moshe when we go to Israel?
Of course, we have like spare 4 seconds in our schedule. So in these 4 seconds, of course we can. Anyhow, yes, we can. And we can go to Shavei Israel and we can speak with them. Anyhow, everything I said right now on a shelf over here, I'm telling you as if a different story, but it's not a different story. It will connect to the previous one. 500 years ago, Jews were just expelled from Spain. The Spanish kings just kicked us out. And at the same time, they are conquering South America. It's something that happens same time. Like the year 1492 is both the discovery of America by Columbus and the expulsion of the Jews of Spain. And several years later, there's a ship of new Christians, former Jews, converted to Christianity, coming to Peru. Now, those people officially are Christian. They just went to some church in Madrid. They just went through the ceremony of the Catholic priest, whatever. Those guys are officially Christians, but former Jews. And they are landing in Peru, and the local Spanish governor, he looks at them, and he like has this thought, he has this idea. You see, when the Spaniards conquered South America, the thing that they were looking for is gold and silver and gold and silver and gold. And they just took it wherever they could. The pyramids, some of them used to be filled with gold. Like they were an inner room, an inner chamber without any corridor or door leading inside, just built as they built the pyramid. They cleared some space, a lot of gold, and they kind of built all over it. And the Spaniards understood it. So when they got this idea, they used to take the local Indians and just using them as slaves, as labor force to dig into the pyramids and to take the gold out. But the Indians died like terribly in huge numbers. It was a huge tragedy because of murder and killing and all kind of diseases that the Spaniards brought. It was bad. So this local governor, he just lost all his labor force, but he wants to take the gold out of the pyramids. And now he sees this ship of new Christians coming, and he thinks, oh, I can use those guys. They're not really Christians. They're former Jews. I can turn them into slaves or half slaves or whatever. So he takes everybody and he sends them to this slave labor. But these people, they won't dig. And they are arguing and they are claiming to be free people and they have rights and everything. So the local governor, he sends a letter to Spain, to Madrid, to the kings. And he says, blah, 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 blah. I need some slaves. I need some labor force, blah, blah, blah. I have this ship of new Christians. They won't work. So I ask your permission. I ask the permission of the king to kill half of them. So the other half will be afraid and will dig wherever I told them. He asked permission because those guys are, after all, Christians, and you cannot just kill a bunch of Christians. Now the Spanish kings, they read his letter and they say, well, of course, we don't care, kill everybody, blah, blah, blah. And they dictate their answer to the guy who knows, to the guy who knows how to write next door. And they have, like, there's the king and there's the guy who writes his letters. And the king, he says, blah, 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 of course you can kill half of them, blah, blah, blah. The guy who actually writes the text and sending the letter, he's a hidden Jew, he's a secret Jew. And he knows that this letter is basically a death sentence to people just like him on the other side of the planet. So he does a very brave thing. He keeps the letter of the king with himself for the next ship. He kind of didn't send it with the ship that goes today. Next week, there's another one. But with today's ship, he sends his own letter to that group of Jews, of new Christians. He says, hi, you don't know me. My name is blah, 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 whatever. I write the letters for the king. I'm actually a secret Jew. Now, if anybody sees that, if the Inquisition sees that, he dies, his family dies, his children die, maybe all of his neighbors also. This is craziness. And still he writes to those people, I am a secret Jew, I'm a hidden Jew. Know that with the following ship, there's this death sentence to half of you coming. So do whatever you need to do to survive. And the people who received this letter, these new Christians, they are also actually hidden Jews. They just pretend to be Christian. So they read the letter, they understand that they need to escape, and so they run away. And they run to the jungle, run, until a couple of days later, they reach to a village, and there's a village. And it looks just as if some miracle happened because the fires are still on, food on the tables, there are goats in the wherever goats live. Everything is like ready for people. And this group of Jews standing in the middle of the jungle, they call around, it's empty, no people at all. They call around, nobody answers, and they said, okay, God did a miracle. We will live here. So they stopped them. And 4, 5, 6 days later, a group of Indians coming down from the mountain saying, you know what, this is actually our village. We saw you coming from a distance. You all look like the Spanish people. We know that when the Spanish people come, we die. So we kind of escaped and we were hiding there on the mountain. But we saw that you are kind of nice and you have a lot of kids and everything. So, hey, let's communicate. And that group of Jews remained there in this jungle, disappeared from history. Several centuries later, more or less the same place, there's this guy saying, you know what, maybe we have to follow some different laws. And eventually his community becomes Bnei Moshe and go through conversion and becomes Jews again. And some of them live today in Israel. Boom. Anyhow, because I have only a few minutes left and everything and blah, 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 blah. Few less sentences. The stories that I just told you are only a part of the general amount of stories. There are other communities of Jewish people at the very edges of the globe, living all kinds of different lives. And maybe when we think about the Jewish people, we think first of all about like the mainstream Jewish communities. But it's not the only part of the history. There are many more. Something happened 2,000 years ago here, out of my window in these hills, and we went all over the earth, literally all over the planet. And the fact that we are back here again, and I'm living here in Tekoa, and not only me, but some other millions of Jews, and we have a country again, it is, well, I'm not religiously, no kippah, nothing at all, but it is kind of a miracle. It can't happen. It's a statistical non-possibility. And yet, hi, we are here doing a Jewish thing within a Jewish community, looking on Jewish faces on the screen. I see your face is Jewish. Anyhow, so think about it, explore a bit. Everything I just told you, you can Google it and look for those crazy communities and other people and all kinds of Jewish adventures all around the globe. My name is Boris Dolin. I have an elephant and I'm happy.
Yay.
Wow.
Thank you, Boris.
That was amazing. Thank you very much. Guys, can you hang on just for like 3 minutes? I just want to sort of like reflect, chat with you all. So please, let's just have a conversation. We didn't do a much of a check-in before, but I don't want to do a check-in right now because I still want to live in this cloud of Boris's stories. So Boris, you forgot to talk about the pirates. I kept waiting for the
Yeah, I don't know. The pirates disappeared on me, but there's a different talk, a completely different talk, an entire talk only about Jewish pirates.
So guys, just unmute yourself. Let's do a little circle. Lisa, Boris, Ben, Ron, everybody, Benjamin, Sam's. Can we do like in a circle? One word, yes. You know what? You need a staff. You're gonna be a Jaffa, you know, with the sloan. I saw an echo. Okay.
Somebody is playing their sound through another.
Oh my God, terrible.
Okay, everybody mute yourselves.
Hello.
I am your Lord Hashem.
Who said that? Jacob? Okay, Jacob, speak. One word to describe. What did you learn? One word to describe a feeling. One word you learned something. Let's just do it quick because we don't have.
Yeah.
You more than you want to.
Hopeful, because if we found one of the tribes, we can find like the other 10 or around 9 rather, right? And then Mashiach will come in. That'll be cool.
Listen, by the time we're done with this social distancing, all the Jews will figure out how to do Shabbat. And you know what they say? If all Jews keep just one Shabbat, peace on earth, Mashiach is here, we celebrate. So, you know, we're going to work on that. All right, Adam. Hi. Sorry. That's it.
Yeah, I would say that's eye-opening. That was really, really cool. It's like, you know, you kind of have this idea of like what Jews look like. I went to IC where you see like 6,000 Jews, and you kind of get to see what like there's like some common characteristics between Jews, and you're like, oh, this is what Jews look like. Like that was like really eye-opening for me there. But it's really, really trippy and weird to see to see all these other people that don't resemble like any of the Jewish characteristics that are passed down through the genes, but they're also still so religious, and they care so much about their Jewish heritage. I think that's really, really cool.
Right. And I don't know, but I wonder if, so for example, those Kaifeng Jews, do they consider themselves religious in the sense of our American thinking, or are they don't, right? They just consider that this is the way of life for them. Whatever. Yeah, that's super interesting. Sasha, what about what reflections, thoughts?
Well, it was interesting to see like the assimilation of people, and how the only way you don't assimilate is by like keeping traditions and what your ancestors did. And it's kind of interesting to see like how my parents assimilated versus how my grandparents were a lot less assimilated because they lived in a Jewish village in Russia. And so there's like a difference there. And, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Who else do we have? Oh, how about Ben? Oh, sorry, Ben Garvin.
Oh, kind of keeping with the one word thing that everyone else was doing, I would have to go with unity, because although we have all these different kind of diaspora, they're all connected. I think kind of the best one that shows this is when with the group of Indians came in with the Old Testament and tried to preach it to the other Jews, is that although we're different diaspora and we come from different cultures, we all do share these things in common that we all have with one another.
Right. I have a question for Boris. Maybe I missed it, but are you saying that it's when you were sitting in this lecture that became a cultural immersion experience for you? Was it one of those Indians who said, "Oh, I forgot how to speak Spanish 500 years ago"?
No. That was another Israeli guy, completely non-Indian.
Got it. Okay. All right. Who else do we have? Is Aaron still here? Or Boris? Oh, there you go.
I am here. I can do the thing if you want.
Yeah, do please.
Well, I'm really bad at putting things into one word, so I'm just gonna use multiple. I think it gives a lot of hope that people in these communities isolated from all other forms of Judaism for literally thousands of years, that they survived. I guess if Judaism survives in those corners of the globe, then I think we'll be okay. No matter what happens, there will always be a little pocket of Jews somewhere, like cockroaches, in the best sense of the word.
Oh my gosh. What?
No matter how much people try to get rid of us, we're kind of still around.
That's deep.
You know, Abba Kovner said the same thing in the Vilna Ghetto in 1941. He ended his speech when he said just that. He said, you know what, this is a terrible time. Horrible things are happening all around us. Maybe we won't survive it. But the thing that keeps me like sleep at night is that we are so spread out all around the world that somewhere one Jew will survive this. And if he survives, the Jewish people survive.
Okay, now I'm gonna put you on a spot. I was trying to text you quickly, but I ran out of time. Can you throw something out that we can disagree and argue about based on what we just heard? Okay, while you're thinking of it, you ready to go?
Kind of.
Oh, of course she is.
Aaron, actually, your comment made me worried, and I'll tell you why. It made me worried that you said, you know what? I don't have to do much, because as you can see, you know, someone somewhere is going to remember that they're Jewish. So I'm cool. I'm just going to sit there and be passive, because these stories have showed me that I don't really need to do much. Someone somewhere is going to remember that they're Jewish.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly.
Kind of just put words in his mouth.
Yeah, it was.
Did I? Did I?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what he said?
His Israeli flag. I don't think that he'll be very passive.
Totally. I
No,
know.
but
It's
it's more of a, not like, oh, we can just sit back and do nothing, but it's more of like there's a difference between passivity and reassurance that everything in the end will work out fine. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything, but I'm saying even when the bottom falls out of everything else, there will always be a Jew somewhere on this planet. So we don't have to worry about total annihilation. You know, we can proceed forward we can still fight for everything that we need, but we don't have to like it takes the fear out of the equation, and it's more propelled by things could be better, not everything's gonna end.
Did nobody feel the way that I felt about your comment?
Just the cockroach comparison.
No, the cockroach one, yeah. But I mean, of course, I am aware that Aaron is sitting with an Israeli flag and American flag. Totally understand. But these stories kind of like, hey, you know, it's gonna be okay. Like, I don't really have to do much. I could be more passive.
Okay, I'm gonna argue with you because nobody else is arguing with me. I did not hear that, but I am grateful that you bring it up, because if you heard it, chances are somebody else kind of, you know, might have not even hear it, but sort of like put it in their heads. But awesome. What about Sam? Sam Lattis. This is an interesting group of you guys. So we're completely mixed within the groups. We have alumni, we have new kids, completely brand new kids that are just joined. We have veterans. So Sam, you're right in the middle.
I don't really know how to describe this lecture in one word. I just never knew that there were Jews in China and India and Africa that left that long ago. Like, not now, but like during the exile. So just mind blowing, I guess.
Yeah, God, nice. Okay, anybody else has anything to share?
I just want to welcome back Evan to the group.
Yeah,
He's
Evan
back from Israel. Like, it's bittersweet, of course. But Evan, if you want to say a few words about why you're back and what happened.
Yeah, so things got pretty intense in Israel. There were a lot of rulings that went out pretty quickly. One of them is that you can't have more than 10 people in one room, which makes a 60-person program very difficult to run. So unfortunately, we all had to get sent back, and it was like really surreal. Like, airports were like jam-packed. Like, there were just tons of people, everyone like fleeing home, and just but on the flight, the amount of Jewish geography was ridiculous. Like, everyone, like, you turn to someone like you had a mutual friend or you knew someone. It was just like, it was really crazy. So
are you now in the like self-imposed quarantine?
no, there's actually no specific quarantine for Israel, probably because they handled it pretty well pretty early, but like just the same shelter in place. So
I mean, it's pretty kosher there, so no need to quarantine.
How are you guys all handling? How are you guys all handling being inside?
I love it.
Pretty good. Nothing really changes for me. I'm an
Yeah, like
It sucks.
like they actually have to tell me to stay inside. Like, I had other plans of going outside.
Terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
It's actually pretty nice because now when I jog, I mean, I started jogging for the first time because of this, and it's
So did I.
Yeah, me too.
It's nice because like
Because you can't go to the gym. The gym's closed.
And the best part is when all the old ladies, they see me and they give me like a dirty look and then like walk 6 feet away from me so that I don't breathe on them.
I have a question for Boris.
It's like, you can stay home, whatever.
I have a question for Boria. Boris, these groups of people that you discussed, sorry, do they have law of return if they wanted to return to Israel, automatically citizenship?
No, most of them actually don't, because most of them are not considered to be halachically Jews. The community on Mallorca, those guys, if they declare themselves Jews, they can return to Israel. Because again, you can follow all their family lines until some Jewish ancestor 400 or 500 years ago. Although they themselves today are Catholic.
Boris? Hi. Hi, Odin from LA. I really loved how you painted this picture of just how big and beautiful the Jewish story is. And what surprises me is my family in Israel doesn't have a sense of it. And just growing up, you'll go to school and you'll have like a classmate who has a Polish mom and an Iraqi dad or something. You would think they get it. But often, at least within my own family, it seems to be taken for granted. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on how Israelis themselves may be losing touch, because before, all the places that these stories came from, most of those places don't exist anymore. So Israel's become this bastion for all the stories. And what, do you have any concerns in the future that Jews are going to have a harder time holding on to this stuff because they're condensed into almost just two countries between America and Israel?
So in 2 sentences, first of all, the situation that you describe, yes, it actually happens. Israel lives a very intense life. Things just keep happening, and we just don't have enough time or energy to think about all those previous generations in all those times. This is A. And B is that Israel was created kind of as, from a point of view of rejecting the exile and rejecting all those places and rejecting the types of Jews that we as if were there, although the image that we painted here is not correct. So we are forgetting those long ways and those generations and everything, but sometimes life reminds us. So a tiny story about my neighbor and friend. His name is Masha. His name is Elio, and he is a Yemenite Jew. His family is from Yemen. His wife also, and they're 100% Yemenite family. Darkish. They speak Hebrew with a specific accent. They have, I cannot pronounce it, but they have their own way to say ch and ein, like chet and ein, which is beautiful. They have their own Yemenite food and blah, 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 everything. So this guy, he found a box of books, basically praying books in Hebrew that belonged to his grandfather in Yemen 100 years ago. Like old books, yellow, ancient, just imagine it. It looks exactly like that. And I sat with him as he was opening this box, and suddenly I see that the books were printed in Vilna or Kiev. I was born in Kiev. And you have writing in the beginning in Russian, like old Russian of the 19th century, saying that this book is allowed by the Tsar and by the government and by the censorship and everything. And around this writing in Russian, his grandfather wrote all kind of comments by hand in Hebrew also, or Yemenite Arabic. And it's kind of all around mixing together. And now me, a Jew that was born in Kiev, and Elior, a guy who was born in Israel, but his line coming from Yemen in the recent generations, we are sitting together here in Tkoa on a hill in Judea, reading this book together, and it's kind of blows your mind away. Yes, Masha.
I said nothing, but all I want to say is that Boris Dolin is going to be our amazing tour guide when we go to Israel.
If.
I'm sorry.
When?
When we go to Israel, if
Cup is half empty.
If.
Guys, we have everything ready. We're going to Israel. And
according to the projected timelines right now, it runs out about 2 weeks before our Israel trip. So
And a delay does not mean if. A delay means when. Still, it just may be a little later.
Exactly. And all I can tell you is that Boris can tell these stories nonstop for probably 20 hours easily. The first time he came to San Francisco, he took our group on a walking tour of San Francisco. This is the man who's never been to San Francisco. He ran away. I couldn't see him for a week. He bought books. He walked around the city, and then he took a group of us on an 8-hour walking tour of San Francisco. And I learned things about the city that I have never, ever known. So
that's cool.
Boria, thank you very much. We're gonna let him rest and